Welcome to Human Monsters and part 3 of the story of the Chad and Lori Daybell murders. There was some discussion in court about the connection between the principles and the Mormon faith. For one thing, the Church of the Firstborn is not an official sect of the Mormon Church. Detective Duncan was born into the Mormon religion. John Pryor grilled him about aspects of the religion. He was notable for his aggressive and condescending approach. Duncan said he believed Chad Daybell was not charged with the murder of Charles Vallow because there was no reasonable likelihood of conviction. Pryor asked several questions Duncan was unable to answer. Duncan was asked about the details of Charles's final day as a mortal. He asked Duncan if he knew Alex Cox traveled to Mexico to purchase medications for some health problems he was suffering from. He was unaware of this development. Lindsay Blake redirected. She asked Duncan if Alex died shortly after the trip to Mexico. Duncan said he died. She asked him if he believed Alex Cox acted alone when murdering Charles Vallow. Duncan said he didn't. She asked him if he felt Chad should have been charged with the murder. He said he did. The next witness to be called was FBI Special Agent Mark Sari. Wood began the questioning. Sari said that in January of 2020, he was assigned the task of locating the children. He went on to say Tylee received survivor benefits to the tune of $1,859 per month because her father died. Lori was the representative payee. On August 27, 2019, the payments were redirected to Lori's account. The payments stopped in January 2020 because Tylee went missing. J.J. Vallow received $1,951 per month, which was deposited to Lori's account. His payments also stopped in January 2020 when he went missing. Lori received $1,951 in Social Security payments, but they also stopped coming when JJ's whereabouts became unknown. Lori didn't bother to notify the Social Security Department that she remarried, the children were missing or were dead, and she relocated to Hawaii. Mr. Wood finished with his questioning. John Pryor began his cross-examining. He said that though Lori failed to advise Social Security of the representations, it had nothing to do with Chad. Special Agent Sari said that if Chad had been aware of it, he would have been obliged to notify Social Security of those developments. No further questions. The trial adjourned for the day. April 17th, 2024. The next witness to take the stand was Detective Chuck Conatus of the Rexburg Police Department. Mr. Wood began the questioning. The detective's involvement in the case began when the search warrants were issued for the 3 apartments in which Lori, Alex, and Melanie dwelled. He found a receipt for a storage unit. He also discovered she had a P.O. box. He was given a warrant to search. There were numerous pieces of mail from financial institutions, cell phone bills, letters from the IRS and the Social Security Administration. Other warrants were served to financial institutions and cell phone service providers. He said he is able to find much information about someone through these avenues, especially if he is searching for a missing person. One financial account was entered into the evidence trove. The information contained within: a joint account between Lori Vallow and Charles Vallow from J.P. Chase Bank. A J.P. Chase account between Lori and Tylee Ryan. A BBVA Compass account between Lori and Tylee. A BBVA account between Lori and Charles. A Barclays credit card between Lori and Alex. First Hawaiian Bank account for Lori. A business account for Charles. A $2 million life insurance policy for Lori. There was also documents indicating an account between Lori and Chad, with J.P. Morgan Chase interacting with Tylee's account. There was a statement displaying the history of Tylee's banking transactions. It included the death benefit she received after her father perished, purchases made at retail establishments, fast food outlets, and gas stations on a nearly daily basis. He said she rarely purchased things online, preferring to pound the pavement. A payment report covering nearly a month's worth of transactions between August 23, 2019 through to September 3, 2019 was included. Her last in-person payment was made at a McDonald's location in St. George, Utah on September 1st, 2019. In August, Lori rang up Social Security and arranged for the monthly payments to be deposited into her account instead of Tylee's. No payments were made to Tylee's account after that, and the remaining funds were redirected to Lori's account. Following all this activity, the balance remaining in Tylee's account was $0. The statement displayed was from Lori's account. She made purchases online using money from Tylee's account. Lori and Tylee both had their own PIN numbers, which enabled the bank to distinguish which of them made a purchase. The account was closed on September 20th, 2019. The next statement on display presented Tylee's J.P. Chase Morgan account. The transactions were made after September 20th, 2019. The balance, $0. In Lori's bank statement from the BBVA account indicated that Tylee's benefits were deposited on August 28, 2019. 10 days later, Tylee was murdered. These payments were received 5 times after the change to the account was made and 4 times after Tylee's death. On September 2019, 2 more deposits were made to Lori's account. One was for JJ's benefits and one for Lori's benefits. JJ was murdered a few days later. The detective was so disturbed by this, he became emotional and fought back tears. JJ's benefits were deposited into Lori's account 4 more times, subsequent to his death. The following statement displayed credit card activity using the card used by Lori and Chad. One payment was made to Valley of the Sun Mortuary the day after Charles was killed. Another transaction involved Allegiant Airlines, a ticket for Chad to fly from Provo, Utah to Mesa, Arizona. The ticket was bought while Tammy was still alive. With the monthly joint credit card used by Lori and Alex, an airline ticket purchased for Lori took her from Phoenix to Idaho Falls on February 25, 2019. The Idaho Falls Airport is the closest to Chad's home. Other documents were entered into evidence. Among them, a rental agreement for the Jeep, an apartment rental agreement, financial information about Alex Cox, It showed that he had been receiving frequent payments from his workplace, typically 2 or 3 paychecks a month. He took out a loan for $21,000 shortly before he resigned and moved to Idaho with Lori and the kids in tow. He had no job or income from any source at that time. He inputted medical reasons as the criterion for applying for the loan. The detective found no documents detailing Alex's medical history. In August 2019, Alex purchased some firearms. It is unknown if he had ever owned guns before that time. The court adjourned for a mid-morning break. Once court was back in session, the detective resumed his testimony. Statements from Chad Daybell's bank account were examined. The first they looked at was an account application at First Hawaiian Bank. The second was for a credit card at Citibank. There was also an application for a Visa card at Wells Fargo. This was followed by a monthly statement for a Capital One card assigned to Chad and Tammy. The next document to see the light of day had as its source the Hawaiian Dreams Organization. An email was sent to one Julie Black from the address chad.daybell@gmail.com, dated November 8th, 2019, 3 days after Chad and Lori married. This is a quote from the body of the email. "We are interested in seeing this property. Would the owners be interested in leasing this property to a clean couple with no kids or pets?" The detective said the children had gone missing at the time the email was sent. Tylee's cell phone was in Lori's possession at the time. Venmo transfers were passing through Tylee's account, but arranged by Lori. The money was withdrawn from Venmo. There were numerous documents of flights and other travel-related records involving individuals relevant to this case. The court took a lunch break. Wood had no further questions to ask the detective. John Pryor, on the other hand, took the opportunity to cross-examine the detective. The detective informed the court that Alex shared a credit card account with Lori. This account paid for a flight Chad took. Pryor asked the detective if he was aware that Chad wasn't charged with the murder of Charles Fallow. The detective said yes. The detective said Chad and Lori never had a joint bank account. Not once did they ever combine their money. He said that when Tylee's card was used for a transaction in the Costa Vida restaurant, Tylee's phone was also noted as being used in the area. However, speculation has it that Tylee had already been murdered by then. The investigators contacted the restaurant in hopes of getting CCTV or security camera footage, but too much time had elapsed to get footage of the principals involved. Other phone records were not examined to see who among them were at the restaurant at the time. The detective said there was no evidence to substantiate the theory that Chad was in possession of funds Lori received from Social Security. John Pryor had no further questions. Rob Wood's redirect. He wanted to know why the flight information was relevant to the investigation. The detective said it was because it signified when they met and that Lori began to pay for his flights shortly thereafter. Mr. Wood had no further questions. The next witness to take the stand was FBI forensic accountant Michael Douglas. A financial transaction timeline was contributed to the evidence trove. It included a history of Tylee's transactions. It shed light on when Lori began to receive Tylee's Social Security payments and when they moved to Rexburg. A message was sent by Tylee's older brother Colby on the 8th of September asking for money to be sent to him through Venmo. This was a frequent occurrence. Tylee told him she couldn't send him any Venmo money because the money was being sent to Lori's account. On September 9th, 2019, Lori sent her accountant an email asking why she hadn't received a tax refund. On September 10th, one of Tylee's accounts was added as a source account on Venmo. On September 20th, Tylee's JP Morgan Chase account was closed, and the remaining account was entirely barren of funds. September 22nd is significant as being the date of the last known sighting of JJ. There were numerous texts sent between Tylee's phone and those of Lori and Colby. Lori texted Tylee's phone to tell her to send money to Colby. This happened a few times. On October 9th, 2019, Tammy reported that a shooting had occurred. On October 19th, 2019, a transfer was made from Tylee's account to Colby. The IP address was indicated as being Kansas City, Missouri. On October 19th, 2019, Tammy passed away. On November 5th, 2019, Chad and Lori were married. On June 8th, 2020, Tylee and JJ's bodies were discovered on Chad's property. Another timeline was entered into evidence, this one detailing JJ's financial records. It had as its starting date the year 2018 when Chad and Lori met. On July 11th, 2019, Charles was murdered. Lori sent a text to Chad about the subject of receiving $4,000 in monthly payments from Social Security, but nothing about the insurance money. On August 9th, 2019, Lori posted the Craigslist ad selling JJ's support dog. August 12th, 2019, Lori's $2 million life insurance policy was altered to make Colby the beneficiary. Tylee's and Jaylee's names were conspicuously absent. On August 14th, 2019, Lori submitted an application for an apartment in Rexburg. She informed the proprietor that she was to receive $5,740 every month from Social Security. On September 1st, 2019, Lori and the children relocated to Rexburg. September 9th, 2019, was the date of the last known sighting of Tylee. September 18th, 2019, the Social Security payments to be made to JJ were deposited into Lori's account. On September 22nd, 2019, the date of JJ's last known appearance. October 9th, 2019, Tammy reported a shooting. October 19th, 2019, was the date of Tammy's death. November 5th, 2019, the date of Chad and Lori's wedding. June 9th, 2020, the children's remains were unearthed. A document was added to the evidence trove revealing that Lori received $22,545 after the deaths of the children. The next document added to the timeline had as its title, The Grand Theft Timeline. April 3rd, 2018, Joseph Ryan died. June 14th, 2018, Tylee's reception of Social Security payments began. October 23rd, 2018, Lori opened a BBV account. October 26th, 2018, Joseph Ryan's life insurance payout of $64,000 was issued. Chad and Lori met on that day. July 11th, 2019, Charles Vallow was killed. July 12th, 2019, Lori's credit card was used to pay for the mortuary's services. It was the same day Chad called the mortuary. July 18th, 2019, Lori sent a text to Chad about receiving the monthly Social Security payments to the tune of $4,000, but none from the life insurance policy. July 24th, 2019, the date when Tylee's account received deposits from Social Security for the last time. August 12th, 2019, the day when Lori's life insurance policy was changed to make Colby the beneficiary. August 14th, 2019, Lori applied for the apartment in Rexburg. August 16th, 2019, Tylee's payments were redirected to Lori's account. August 28th, 2019, Tylee's Social Security payments were made to Lori's account. September 1st, 2019, Lori and the children moved to Rexburg. September 1st, 2019, a text message was sent from Tylee to Colby about how their mother was getting the Social Security money. September 8th, 2019, the last time Tylee was seen alive. September 18th, 2019, the day when Lori and JJ's Social Security payments were deposited into Lori's account. September 22nd, 2019, text messages regarding Lori sending money to Colby were sent. It was also the last day JJ was seen alive. August 9th, 2019, the attempted murder of Tammy Daybell. October 10th, 2019, activity in the Venmo account was noted as being rooted in Kansas City, Missouri. October 19th, 2019, Tammy Daybell passes away. November 5th, 2019, Chad and Lori get married. November 8th, 2019, Chad sends an email to the Hawaii Dreams Real Estate Company. He told them he had no children. December 20th, 2019, Rexburg announced they were launching an investigation. January 3rd, 2020, the first search on Chad's property was carried out. June 9th, 2020, the day when the children's remains were found. Now that consistency was noted and established in both timeline reports, it was time to take a closer look at Chad's books. October 3rd, 2018, Chad purchased a prepaid phone. October 26th, 2018, Chad and Lori met. February 23rd, 2019, Alex used his credit card to purchase a flight so Lori could go to Idaho Falls. March 14th, 2019, Lori bought an airline ticket for Chad so he could fly to Arizona. April 22nd, 2019, Lori bought Chad a ticket to fly to Houston. May 31st and June 17th, 2019, Chad purchased prepaid phones. July 11th, 2019, Charles Vallow dies. Chad called the mortuary and Lori paid for their services. July 18th, 2019, Lori informed Chad that she was receiving payments from Social Security but not life insurance. July 20th, 2019, Lori paid for Chad to fly to Arizona. August 2nd, 2019, Lori paid for Chad to fly yet again, though the destination was not noted. August 10th, 2019, Lori bought a flight to Idaho Falls. September 1st, 2019, Lori and the children moved to Rexburg. September 8th, 2019, Tammy's life insurance payout value was increased. September 8th, 2019, the last known occasion when Tylee was seen alive. September 18th, 2019, Chad purchased another prepaid phone. September 22nd, 2019, the last time JJ was seen alive. October 8th, 2019, Chad instigated a refinance with Wells Fargo. October 9th, 2019, an attempt was made to take Tammy Daybell's life. October 19th, 2019, Tammy passes away. October 24th, 2019, Chad filed with his life insurance company. He canceled the refinance with Wells Fargo. October 30th, 2019, Chad filed his life insurance claim. November 1st, 2019, Chad received his last check and resigned from LDS Eval. This was a column he wrote and was compensated monetarily on the back end. November 5th, 2019, Chad married Lori. November 19th, 2019, Chad purchased a SIM card and a total wireless phone card. November 29th, 2019, a family trip to Knott's Berry Farm. Chad purchased 7 tickets, himself, Lori, and 5 children. December 29th, 2019, Chad made a transfer of $1,000 to his 3 eldest children. The same day, Rexburg police announced Tylee and JJ were missing. January 3rd, 2020, 2 money transfers were made with Chad's middle son as the recipient, one from a business account and the other from his personal account. The total transferred was $1,500. March 6th, 2020, Lori is extradited from Hawaii to Idaho. March 8th, 2020, Chad sold his Dodge Dakota and his Chevy Equinox to his 2 daughters. They paid him $200 cash. June 9th, 2010, Chad transferred $8,000 to his 3 eldest children the morning the search was carried out. It was the day Tylee and JJ's remains were discovered. The same day, he transferred $10,000 from his book account to his personal banking account. He also sent $8,000 to Seth Daybell and the same amount to Emma Murray. Additionally, he transferred $8,000 to his son Garth from his savings account. The time of the transfers was noted to be 9:50 a.m. The police were searching his property while he made these transactions. The court adjourned for the day. Michael Douglas took the stand once again. Rob Wood questioned him. Douglas explained to the court what Venmo is and detailed the history of Lori and Tylee's Venmo transactions. Subsequent to her death, 29 payments were made from Tylee's account to Colby. They amounted to a total of $5,000. Mr. Wood had no further questions. John Pryor cross-examined. Douglas observed Chad's continual pattern of purchasing cell phones to be noteworthy. Pryor asked him if he considered this to be ideal for a man having an extramarital affair. He asked him if it would be an ideal way to conceal the relationship from his wife. Douglas said, "If you say so. I've never bought a phone for that purpose." Pryor brought up Tylee's financial timeline. The first entry was the death of Joseph Ryan. He asked Douglas if Chad was affiliated with Lori and Tylee at that time. Douglas said, "Not to my knowledge." Lori received a payment from Ryan's life insurance policy to the tune of $64,964. Though Chad and Lori met within a couple of days from this occasion, the policy had been in effect a long time before they came into contact. Pryor noted other transactions, saying to Douglas, "You're not trying to imply Chad had anything to do with Charles Value's death, are you?" Douglas said all he was pointing out were a timeline and a report on funding sources for Tylee. They discussed Tammy's life insurance. In total, Chad received $430,000. The Malachite rings came up. Pryor asked Douglas if he knew Alex and Zulema were married at that time. Melanie Boudreau also married at the time. No further questions from Pryor. Wood came forward with a redirect. He asked Douglas what Chad and Lori's wedding rings were like. Douglas said, "They were malachite rings." Douglas confirmed that Chad was aware that Lori was receiving at least $4,000 a month from Social Security. Wood brought up Pryor's suggestion that burner phones are an effective way to maintain secrecy for an extramarital affair. He asked him if they were also a good way to conceal a crime. Douglas said they are. Wood said, "If someone was having an affair and the mistress's husband dies, and then your wife dies, and you marry that woman 10 days later, and then the next year 2 dead children are found on your property, are those the type of events that would lead someone to buy multiple burner phones?" Douglas said, "It could." Wood had no further questions. The next witness called forth was Melanie Gibb. Lindsay Blake began questioning. Gibb said she met Chad Daybell at a social gathering in summer of 2017. They talked but did not get together afterwards. She met Lori at a church in October 2018. Lori instigated their contact, and they remained friends from that point onwards. A few weeks later, they went to St. George, Utah, for some kind of religious conference. 5 or 6 of them traveled as a unit. Chad was selling his books and delivering a speech at the conference. She bore witness to the fateful meeting of Lori and Chad. Melanie entered the building with Lori and can't remember if she introduced Lori to Chad or if Lori introduced herself. Gibb could tell from the get-go that there was an instant connection between Lori and Chad. Both of them were married at the time. Gibb met Charles, but not Tammy. Subsequent to the conference, Melanie traveled to Arizona with Lori. She said Lori and Chad discussed having lived multiple past lives, as in reincarnation. She named the Mormon canon figure Moroni as one of the personages she had inhabited. They also discussed probations and other related subjects. Note, reincarnation is not part of the Mormon belief system. Melanie said before Lori met Chad, the 2 women discussed having lived multiple lives. Lori told Melanie that Chad gave her some new information on the subject at the conference. He told her they had been married in previous probations. Lori lapped it all up. Gibb met Tylee and JJ at Lori's home. She mentioned that Lori and Tylee had a rocky relationship. They generally did not get along. Tylee and JJ had a harmonious relationship, though due to being autistic, JJ was never focused on their relationship for long. She said that when Lori and the family began moving frequently, she and Lori grew apart to some degree. Gibbs said she saw Chad at a conference in Arizona the following month. Tammy wasn't present, but Lori was. After the conference, Gibb ran into Chad at a social function at Lori's house in Arizona. 20 of the attendees met before the conference. Lori and some of her closest friends were there. Lori and Chad spoke often at this event. Melanie could tell there was still a strong attraction between them. Lori told Melanie that she and Chad were married in prior probations and intended to be resealed to each other in a Mormon temple in the fashion they were in previous incarnations. They had visited the temple. Charles and Tammy were still alive at that time. During the conference, Chad stayed at Lori's home. Charles was not in town. Alex might have been there at the time, but beyond that, there were no other men on the premises. Both Lori and Melanie read Chad's books. Melanie said Lori frequently called Chad and he would give her information about previous probations. From there, Lori would share the information with Gibb. Gibb said Lori detailed the subjects of light and dark as described by Chad. Lori said if someone hailed from the light, they made contracts with Jesus Christ before their rebirth on earth. If they originated from the dark, they made contracts with Satan. She said there was a scale level that described the natures of light and dark people. Elaborating further on the subject of probations, Lori said people live multiple lives and she intended to work out when. Lori asked Chad how many times people appeared on Earth or other planets. Lori would impart to Melanie what Chad had told her. She told Melanie that every person had a number and were assigned the letter L or D for light or dark. The numbers and letters were assigned by Chad. Lori believed fervently that it was her mission and responsibility to gather women for the 144,000. As they put it, the 144,000 is a biblical explanation for a finite amount of people to occupy the mortal realm at the end of time, a belief that is also held by the Jehovah's Witnesses. Chad, too, believed this was Lori's objective. Lori was spreading the word about light, dark, and multiple probations. She included Zulema, Melanie, Alex, and other people. Chad also proselytized on these subjects to them. Though Gibb was familiar with those topics, she had never encountered Chad's perspective. She was open to learning more. Chad and Lori discussed with her the topic of people switching to dark from light, or vice versa. Lori told her she got the information from Chad. She said an evil entity could enter a person and it could lead a light person to becoming dark. Lori said Chad also told her that. She went on to tell Zulema, Serena, Nicole, Christina, Melanie, and others who were not considered to be as significant. It was in January 2019 that Lori detailed for Melanie everything she knew about light and dark people. According to Lori, the first person in her life to turn dark was Charles. Chad told her that Charles was, as George Lucas would put it, seduced by the dark side. Previously, Lori said that when a person becomes dark, their spirit enters the spirit world, but the flesh was still alive and animated by a dark spirit. Lori would attempt to cast the evil spirit out of the body with the objective of persuading it to leave voluntarily. Lori came up with the idea for casting from the energy work she had been doing. This was when Charles was assigned the pseudonym Ned Schneider. It was Chad who announced that his name had been changed. Lori told Melanie about a dream she had while Charles was out of town. In this dream, Charles and JJ were not going to return because they had been in a car accident and Charles did not survive the crash. Of course, Charles did not die in a car crash. She told Melanie that it was after the dream when Charles turned dark. During one casting, the women stood in a circle. Some prayed, while others sent spiritual weapons. The people having spirits cast out of their bodies were not physically present. When they performed the casting for Charles, Ned departed, but Chad informed them that another entity entered his body almost instantaneously. Gibb bore witness as Chad imparted this knowledge to other people who were part of Lori's life, including Alex. Lori told Melanie that the body would die if the casting were a success. More castings were carried out in reference to Charles. They tried driving another evil spirit out of Charles, and Lori was convinced that it worked. Chad told her it worked, and she believed it. Despite their best efforts and faith in their actions, Charles remained alive and intact. Chad told her another entity entered Charles's body. Occasionally, Chad attended the castings. One was performed for Brandon Boudreaux. Both Chad and Melanie witnessed that rite. When this was mentioned in court, Chad shook his head. Melanie had been introduced to Brandon, who was Lori's nephew-in-law. Lori told her Chad viewed Brandon as a dark person. Ultimately, anybody who obstructed Chad and Lori's path to gratification was deemed dark. Gibb said castings were also performed for the purpose of affecting Tammy Daybell. She didn't remember if they were carried out against Tylee and JJ. The Charles castings occurred in January and February 2019 and continued until shortly before his death. Had the castings been successful, his body would have deteriorated toward death from natural causes. Violence was never mentioned during the casting ceremonies. There were people who were more involved in castings than Lori, but Lori and Zulema were more knowledgeable than most of the people who inhabited their social circle. The casting attended by Chad transpired in Arizona. July 11th, 2019, Charles was killed. Melanie had gotten to a point where she believed he might have been possessed by a demonic entity. She interacted with him a few times, but their relationship did not graduate past the level of acquaintanceship. Most of what she knew about Charles came secondhand from Lori. June 2019, Melanie stayed at Lori's home. At some point, Lori asked her to leave. Gibb woke up early one morning, and Lori told her she needed to make herself scarce because Charles was returning from a trip to Texas and was going to kill Lori. She said Alex would protect her. Gibb described Lori and Alex as being very close, but not in an unusual way. Alex played the official role of Lori's protector. That was his mission in life, and it was the entire reason he incarnated on Earth as a human being. Chad told Lori it was Alex's purpose. Following Charles's murder, Lori told Melanie he returned from his trip to Texas and she took possession of his cell phone. She said he was very angry at her and Tylee owned a baseball bat, which could be used to protect Lori. Alex went into his room to retrieve his gun to defend himself and murdered Charles. Lori and Melanie spoke again 4 days after Charles's demise. Chad was in Arizona and staying at Lori's house. Chad and Lori were sitting at the kitchen table with several others and were excitedly sharing their plans for the future. There were no detectable signs of grief or remorse in either of them. Tammy Daybell was still in the pink. The trial adjourned for a mid-morning break. Melanie Gibb took the stand again. Blake resumed the questioning. Before Charles was killed, Melanie talked to Lori about her relationship with Chad. Lori told her they truly loved each other and served missions together in multiple lives. There was much physical contact between them. Lori also told her that whenever she got together with Chad, she would ask Jesus what was acceptable and appropriate in her activities with Chad. If she felt it was okay to do so, she would meet up with Chad in a hotel. Gibb asked Lori why Chad didn't just get a divorce from Tammy. Chad said he would lose his, quote, exaltation if he did. She did go on to say he had instigated divorce proceedings. Melanie saw that Lori was in possession of 3 phones. One a personal phone, the other devoted only to calls from and to Chad. Melanie knew nothing about the 3rd phone. Gibbs said that by then, Lori spoke to Chad on a daily basis. Melanie couldn't remember any of the names Chad was alleged to have had in previous incarnations, but remembered being told that Lori had been married to Moroni and James, and she had been Chad's wife, but he was James at the time, and she, Elena. Chad was considered to be Methuselah, and she was his daughter at the time. Lori also claimed to have been a relative of Mormon church founder Joseph Smith. As previously stated, when Chad was James, one of Jesus' apostles, Lori was Elena. Lori learned all this from Chad, either because both were con artists or just strangers to critical thinking. Lori said Chad would sit in his, quote, portal and ask questions to get a hold of this information. Gibbs said she saw Lori's so-called portal and said it was nothing but a nondescript spot in her closet. There was nothing conspicuous about it. Chad taught Lori that it was a portal. The only portal involved was situated between his buttocks, the area from whence he was pulling all this out. Lori told Gibb she needed to go to Idaho to join Chad. On another occasion, she told her Tylee was dark. She came to this conclusion because of what she had been learning from Chad. February 2019. Melanie saw Chad using a pendulum, the one he used to glean his answers from the realm of spirit. She described the pendulum as being gold and attached to a string. There was a conference in Boise, Idaho, and it was attended by Chad, Zelima, Serena, Audrey, and others. Lori was in Hawaii. Once Lori had moved to Idaho, she spoke to Gibb on the phone. She was playing games with Alex and Tylee in her apartment at the time. Melanie was able to hear Tylee in the background. September 22nd, 2019. Melanie paid a visit to Rexburg to attend a conference. She also had plans to record a podcast with Lori, which they had done before. When Gibb showed up at Lori's apartment, Alex and JJ were present. Sometimes Chad would stop by. Gibb's boyfriend, David Warwick, was there. Gibb and Warwick would later marry. Gibb never saw Tylee while she was in Idaho. Lori told her Tylee was at BYU, Idaho, in the company of her roommates. Melanie stayed in Tylee's bedroom. She said that aside from furniture, there were no indications that Tylee had resided there, i.e., no personal possessions. Lori told Gibb that JJ had become dark the day before Melanie arrived. Melanie had once been told that Tylee was dark, but she observed no behavior in JJ's conduct that indicated that he was possessed by an infernal spirit. One day during Gibb's time there, JJ became emotional. Chad took him upstairs. After a time, he came back downstairs holding JJ's hand. There was a red scratch on Chad's neck. When Gibb asked him what happened, he said JJ scratched him. Melanie had not seen any interactions between Chad and JJ before that day. Tammy was still alive. Gibb said Chad talked about Tammy a little. David asked him questions about his relationship with Tammy. Chad described her as a good wife. Gibb said she hadn't heard him say anything about getting a divorce. She witnessed several interactions between Chad and Lori during her stay. They were highly demonstrative, with lots of hugs and other displays of affection. Lori frequently kissed him on the cheek. They even sang and danced together. They went to the BYU Idaho campus with Gibb in tow, and Melanie said they held hands. They continued to exchange affections. Melanie asked them if they were concerned about what Tammy might think if she saw them together. Lorraine said Tammy was not aware of that part of his private life. She had no way of knowing where he went. September 22nd. Lori told Gibb this was a special day because it was the anniversary of seeing Moroni in the temple. The last time Melanie saw JJ was when they were recording the podcast on September 22nd with Lori and David. Alex entered the apartment carrying JJ on his shoulder and carried him up to his bedroom. JJ frequently slept on a small bed in a corner of his mother's room, though he did have his own bedroom. JJ didn't sleep in his own room that evening because Melanie and David were sleeping there. David woke in the middle of the night from a nightmare. It left him reeling for some time afterwards. Melanie called out to Lori and Chad so that she could request a priesthood blessing. She called Chad and sent him texts, but received no answers. Melanie acknowledged that she did so in the very early hours. Melanie called and texted Lori, but did not receive any responses from her. She went to Lori's room, but the door was locked. Gibb never saw JJ alive again. She wasn't aware of the life insurance policy. Lori didn't tell her about having a job in Idaho. Lori said JJ was acting out more often and that his behavior was consistent with someone who is demonically possessed. This latest development appeared to deeply disturb Lori. Lori said she wanted Kay Woodcock, JJ's grandmother, to take care of him. Gibb said Lori intended to meet Kay at an airport and hand JJ over to her. Lori had been considering different ways to persuade Kay to assume custody of JJ. She told Gibb she had reached out to Kay and that she had given JJ to her. The morning after Gibb saw JJ for the last time, Lori told her JJ was with Alex. Another explanation. Lori told Gibb she arranged a rendezvous with Kay at the Salt Lake City airport, whereupon Kay collected JJ. November 2019. It was 2 or 3 days before Thanksgiving when Gibb received a phone call from Chad while she was in Utah. He informed her the Rexburg police were going to call her to ask about JJ. He asked her not to answer the call. He said Lori told the police JJ was in Melanie's custody. Gibb noted that Chad sounded anxious. She said to Chad, "Isn't Jay with Kay?" Lori called later and came across as perky. She said she was protecting Tylee and JJ because Kay and other people were trying to abduct him. Gibb said Lori told her to go to a screening of the movie Frozen and take photos of other children to make it look as though she had him with her. Alex told her that law enforcement was considered dark, i.e., translated beings. Melanie said it was always Chad who decided who was dark. Gibb did not initially answer the incoming call from police. She said she didn't know what to do. She wound up calling the Gilbert Police Department. She told them she had JJ in her custody, but that he was returned to Lori. Melanie made arrangements to speak with the police again. The day she was due to speak with them, she received a call from an old friend about the scenario, and he suggested a welfare check was in order. The lawyer called the police and requested the welfare check. Melanie was concerned about Tylee and JJ. She sat down with law enforcement without the representation of a lawyer. She said JJ had never been with her. Following Thanksgiving, Melanie and David called Lori and Chad. They asked them about JJ's whereabouts. Chad and Lori stonewalled her. Gibb spoke with Alex a couple days after Thanksgiving and shared her concerns about JJ. Gibb and Alex accompanied Melanie Pawlowski, who is Lori's niece, over a field. Melanie said to Alex, "Do I want to know where JJ is?" Alex, perhaps ominously, said, "No." He told her that police had been paying visits to his apartment. December 8th, 2019. Gibb placed a call to Chad and Lori. She recorded it. The recording was played for the court. Chad answered by saying, "Hello, sweet Melanie." After exchanging greetings and pleasantries, Gibb asked them where the children were. Chad laughed and said, "We're just hanging out." Gibb asked Lori what happened with JJ and why he wasn't present at Kay's house, like Lori said he would be. Lori said she had to move him because of Kay's actions. Melanie said, "Why? Was Kay trying to kidnap him?" Lori said, "Yes. Kay has said that many times before. However, there were dangerous people after her, so it was safer for everybody." Gibbs told her that she was worried. She wondered why Lori told the police JJ was with her. Chad said, "If you knew where JJ was, that puts you in danger." Lori and Chad both said they refused to disclose JJ's location because they wanted to keep him and everybody else in their circle protected. Gibb asked Lori if JJ was safe. Lori said, "He is safe and happy." Gibb asked how it could have hurt her if she knew where JJ was. Lori said, "I'm just not telling anybody so that nobody has to say where he is or get questioned where he is, so I can keep him as safe as possible." Melanie said, "I hope he's okay. I hope you guys are okay." Gibb went on to say she asked Alex where JJ was, and she was told he was at a place where he couldn't be found. He also said she didn't want to know where he was. Lori said, "Kay is dark and is working with the police in some dark capacity. I know exactly where JJ is. He is perfectly fine and safe." Gibb asked if she could read scripture to Lori. Lori said, "I'd love that." But Lori said that first she wanted to ask Gibb a question. She asked Melanie about prophets from the scriptures and how they hid in a cavity of a rock during the day to ensure their safety. Gibb read to Lori a scripture about not fearing men more than God and being faithful. Gibb said if the door is open to Satan, he will enter and launch an attack. To quote Melanie, "God doesn't work in darkness." Lori said, "I agree 100%, and that is what the Lord is doing for me, exactly what he's doing for me." Gibb said, "It's just," Lori said, "darkness is knocking on the door all the time because that's how darkness works with the light. And I promise you that I have done nothing wrong in this case, but sometimes you have to hide in the cavity of a rock for your own life safety. And that's what the Lord requires of you sometimes. And that's how it is. And I'm sorry that that's how it is because there is a lot of darkness on the earth." Melanie said, "Yeah." Lori said they were badgering her for zero reason besides the darkness of Kay And Gibb knows Kay is dark. Gibb said she didn't know Kay well, having only interacted with her a couple of times, and that she came across as perfectly ordinary to her. Lori said, "So, you don't know about her changing things for herself to be the beneficiary of a policy and all that stuff. None of that is dark, right?" She accused Gibb of being controversial. She said she didn't know what Gibb's intentions were by making the phone call. Nevertheless, she told her she loved her with all her heart and always would. Gibb said, "I appreciate those words, but if you really loved me, you would not have told the police I had JJ with me. That's not what a friend does. That just made me look weird, and it's just not safe for me. That doesn't look good. You have to think of my welfare if you love me." Lori said, "I do, and I did exactly what I thought the Lord was instructing me to do. And I appreciate you, and I love you, and I would never do anything to harm you. And you can have all of this confirmed by the Lord." Melanie said, "I have, and my conscience is clear. I feel very understanding about what's really going on. I believe you have been deceived by Satan. I believe that he has tricked you, and I don't believe what you are doing is correct. Tammy died, then your husband died, and now JJ's missing. It just doesn't sound like God's plan to me. I have this feeling in my gut. It feels weird. It doesn't feel right. I don't have peace. I never have felt 100% peace about it. I felt a little weird in my stomach about all these things." Lori, "You know me, Mel. You know me. This does not sound like you. This sounds like you have been influenced by somebody dark who wants you to obey dark things and who has a fear of the celestial world." Gibb, "I don't have fear." Lori, "Christ is coming soon, and we will all stand there. You will know at that point that he is supporting me and has been supporting me the whole time, and I have not been deceived." Chad, "I just want to testify that I know Tammy's conspiracy theories and my sister-in-law's behind it all, and I hope you haven't been influenced by that dark team." Gibb, "I don't know who she is." Chad, "She's coming up with the same type of theories, and it's just not true. My own children were there, and they testified that Tammy was getting weaker and sicker. I begged her to go to the doctor. Her heart was failing her, but she hates doctors, so she just passed away. That's how it happened. My son Garth was with me the whole time. 2 coroners checked her out, right there on the bed. All these conspiracy theories make me sick to my stomach. I knew 3 years ago that Tammy would die at a young age, but I had no idea that Lori would be part of my life. I just knew that my life would have 2 segments. I know Tammy's on a special mission. She's with my kids and visited them. There is so much, Melanie, and you must have faith in the master plan. There is no way Lori and I could ever come up with this." Melanie, "You can understand my concern, right?" Chad, "I can from an outsider's perspective, but Lori, from someone who knows as much as you know." No, not really, but we can feel David's influence on you. We can feel that for sure. Melanie, "He's a very good man, and he has a very strong foundation." That I know. Chad, "I know, but he seems to be the one putting doubts in your mind." Melanie, "I have come to understand my gut feeling. I was not listening to it, and I always felt uncomfortable with many things." Chad. Okay. Lori. Well, I'm sorry that I included you in those teachings, Mel. I wish you didn't have as much knowledge as you have. You will be accountable for the knowledge that you do have, Mel. Gibb. So will you. Lori. I agree 100%. I have no fear. Melanie. I was reading the story of Corior, and it's so very similar to this. You just can't see it. But he did it because he was trying to reclaim the people. And he thought at the very end, because of his carnal and natural desires, that's what influenced him. Lori. Those are total natural desires. Melanie. Well, you have a lot of natural desires. We all know that. Lori. That's what you think is me? Courier? Are you kidding me right now? Melanie. I think both you and Chad have similarities. Yeah, similarities to Courier. It's in the scriptures, and the scriptures are very powerful. Lori. Yes, they are. And I live by these scriptures, as you know. Melanie. I know, but we can wrest these scriptures for our own vainglory. Lori. I wrested the scriptures? Melanie. Well, we can do that, and I feel that you have belief systems. Lori. So, I wrested the scriptures. Is that what you're accusing me of at this point? Melanie. I feel that you have. Lori. Why do you feel that way? I need an explanation on this. Melanie quoted some scriptures. Lori and Melanie spoke over each other for a moment. Melanie, you would be supported if you had not opened up portals and dark junk. You would have been safe if you had obeyed God, and He would have had your back if you had been chased. Lori, He has my back. Melanie, well, if He has your back, you would be able to tell me where you are, and we couldn't find JJ. I've been asking where he is. Where is he? Do you know what I mean? Lori, that would not be good for JJ, so I'm sorry. Don't you want me to protect my children? I would never ask you not to protect your children. Melanie, of course you would. Lori, so I can tell you're just adversarial, Mel. I love you. I'm sorry that you felt this way. Melanie, because I actually do care. I'm sharing what I feel for you because I know your salvation's in trouble for what you've done. Lori, my salvation is not in trouble at all, and I think you should check back with the Lord again. Melanie, I felt a lot of things from the Lord, and this just doesn't feel right. Lori, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, sweetheart. I'm sorry you are friends with all of those who are against me. Joseph Smith's friends, Melanie. I'm not friends with people who are against you. Lori, apparently you are. Melanie, I am not. I don't know Kay. I don't know your sister. I don't even know her name or who she is. I don't know any of those people. Lori, well, you're friends with Dave, and you know Melanie. Well, David is a very righteous man, and he has had a lot of experiences with the Lord, and these are not the same. They quoted scriptures over each other. Melanie, but your behavior is not one of someone who believes in Christ. I am concerned for you. Crosstalk. Lori, you don't sound concerned. You sound accusatory. You don't sound concerned. You sound pissed off. Melanie, I am troubled. Maybe there's a better word. These things, like you being with Chad before he's even divorced. It's unusual behavior for a person who crosstalk. Lori, I was never with him and he was never divorced. Melanie, honey, I've seen you guys together. Lori, Jesus Christ is protecting me and will protect me against this accusation as well. Lori hangs up. Join me next week for the 4th installment of the Chad and Lori Daybell murders. Thank you for listening to Human Monsters. Bye for now.